continues to fail our children. There continue to be staff shortages, unfulfilled IEPs, inadequate notice to parents of the findings, violations, and their children's right to compensatory education. And there continues to be no remediation plan for the thousands of students who were illegally denied services. You will hear about new survey results which continue to show a flawed system and roadblocks to accessing an appropriate education for our children with disabilities. We are asking the State Board to fulfill its promise of oversight and reform. We are also calling upon Governor-elect Pritzker to strengthen and expand the state oversight of Chicago Public Schools so that our children can receive the promise of an appropriate education to which they are entitled to by law. Thank you. And let me introduce Chris Yoon from Access Living.
Good morning. My name is Chris Yoon, CHRISYUN, and I'm the Education Policy Analyst for Access Living, a disability rights organization in Chicago. Today, special education advocates and parents want to present new special education survey results. In short, CPS is continuously failing students with disabilities, and ISBE is also failing to bring all the changes in time. We are asking Governor-elect JB Pritzker and his transition team to recognize the critical need to reform special education in CPS. We also ask him to ensure that the Illinois State Board of Education ramp up its enforcement efforts so students with disabilities no longer miss the educational services they are entitled to. The survey was prepared by the advocates group and published online through legal, teachers, civil rights, and parent advocacy networks. There were a total of 800 respondents. Based on the survey results, parents and teachers continue to experience teacher and staff shortages, lack of communication, and roadblocks in ensuring services for students. The number one issue is insufficient staffing. 76% of teachers and staff respondents reported that they knew of a student who's not receiving services due to the lack of a special education teacher or other service providers. Given ISBE's findings and monitoring, this is an alarming failure rate. Of the vacancies, special education teachers hit the most. 50% of teachers and staff respondents reported it. Next is paraprofessionals, 42%, then nurses, 21%. Despite CPS's hiring announcements, students are still not receiving educational services because of the district's hiring failure. The second issue is inadequate parent communication. Although ISBE will distribute its belated parent letter this week, the survey results show that CPS's strategy for communicating with parents is not working. Over 70% of parents have not heard about the Parent Advisory Council. Less than 10% of parents have actually seen a copy of the new policy guideline. Lastly, ISBE is failing to bring promised changes. Although ISBE has directed IP teams to address the need for compensatory services for students whose services might have been delayed or denied, almost 80% of teachers and staff who have been to an IP meeting reported that the issue was not even considered. This is another alarming sign that ISBE's reform is not in the right place. Guiding and ordering remedies for CPS's special education violation is a critical job that ISBE must carry out immediately. Still, ISBE has not offered a completed plan for remedies. At the time of the survey, 54% of teachers and staff had not attended a training session on the new special education policies. ISBE is continuously working on CPS staff training, but the speed is too slow. ISBE needs to put a lot more resources to the monitor's office. We offer the governor-elect and his transition team this survey report as an indicator of the current special education issues in Chicago. We want your action. Thank you.
Now let me introduce Laurel Hansen. She's a parent of a child with disabilities.
Hi, I'm Laurel Henson. It's L-A-U-R-E-L, last name is Henson, H-E-N-S-O-N. My son Mason is a child with special needs at Chicago Public Schools. Mason has periventricular leukomalacia, a brain injury, and due to that, he has cerebral palsy, hemiplegia, and 3 different types of seizures. I've been requesting a nurse on staff upon doctor's orders since September of 2017. The request should have been met by CPS last year when I requested an IEP meeting, but I was ignored. I requested an emergency IEP in June this summer after my son had a 23-hour video EEG that showed his seizures had significantly increased, but got nowhere. It was comforting to me to some degree that the state saw that after the investigation done that there was a need to have an external intervention take over to handle the services that were being denied or delayed. However, I am now personally in the middle of November, and the services that I have shown are required by several different medical professionals have not been put into place, and I've been stonewalled in every capacity to get this accomplished. This isn't my son and I's only story. There are many other parents and children that are being put at risk because of the delays and seemingly red tape every step we take. Why hasn't the state taken a more aggressive stance with this, given the investigation that was done that warranted them to take over in the first place? At what point do you determine that my child's safety and other children like my son become more important than fighting with me through red tape to get what he needs to be able to have a normal day like every other child without special needs? As we embark on new leadership at the state level, we implore Governor-elect Pritzker to take this inquiry seriously and assist those of us who have children who want to learn but require services to realize their full potential. The current travesty is the state of special ed at CPS cannot continue. Thank you.
Let me introduce Barb Cohen from Legal Counsel for Health Justice.
Hi, my name is Barb Cohen. I'm from the Legal Counsel for Health Justice, BARBCOHEN. And I wanted to reiterate what my colleagues have commented on already, that services are not being provided as they should be, but I want to expand on another request we have for Governor-elect Pritzker. The Office of the Monitor has made some progress. We've been seeing in our office at Legal Counsel for Health Justice more students receiving their IEP drafts 5 days in advance, and we've seen fewer locks and blocks on the IEP system that governs how services can be included in an IEP. But one of the things we're still seeing with troubling frequency is that there are particular schools that are simply out of compliance. And one of the jobs that the monitor was supposed to have was providing oversight to identify those schools that are systemically, continuously out of compliance and make corrections and reforms for those schools. We get calls just this last week from a student who's in 3rd grade and cannot read, and the school denied an evaluation and said there was no problem with the child not being able to read the word cat because the child is getting a B in English. We received stories about a student whose aide did not go to class as was supposed to. The child who's autistic got into a fight and was suspended, really because the aide was not in the room. So we're asking Governor-elect Pritzker to please expand the Office of the Monitor. There needs to be a more robust staff there to actually implement the oversight role the monitor was supposed to perform. Thank you.
Let me introduce Natasha Carlson, a teacher at Chicago Public Schools.
Good morning. My name is Natasha Carlson, Natasha Carlsen. I teach special education separate class, kindergarten through 4th grade at Marvin Cameras Elementary School. I am also the co-chair of the Chicago Teachers Union Special Education Committee. I am here today to amplify that the fall survey results of 2018 are not only just the 800 that were participated in the survey, but are systematically representation of the continuous failures of CPS and the monitor to ensure that our students with disabilities are protected. In particular, CPS and the ISBE monitor committed to having all of our staff, teachers, special education and general education teachers alike to be trained appropriately before the first day of student attendance, and we are far from that occurring, with only approximately half of the staff trained to date, including 54% of those that were surveyed saying that they had not been trained. This training is critical for teachers and staff to understand their federal obligation and their state obligation in providing students with disabilities the education that they deserve, particularly what CPS had blocked in years prior. In addition, there is still consistent vacancies that are causing our students with disabilities to not have services necessary, that CPS has not done enough to ensure those are fulfilled. In my school in particular, we not only have a teacher vacancy that has denied our students with disabilities any sort of services so far, and the 47th day of student attendance, but it is also paraprofessional minutes that are vacant and not being met, with no real accountability or enforcement in ensuring that these students are given the compensatory services they need. It is a shame that there has not been enough emphasis in ensuring compliance and understanding, and we call on the Governor-elect JB Pritzker to ensure that when he takes office, that the monitor is given robust tools and services to ensure they are fulfilling their federal obligation to our students.
Let me introduce Matt Cohen of Matthew Cohen and Associates.
My name is Matt Cohen, M-A-T-T-C-O-H-E-N. I'm one of the attorneys representing the advocacy group in the ongoing complaint and effort at remediation against CPS. When we started this complaint many, many months ago, the concern that we had was that the Chicago Public Schools are delaying and denying services to children with disabilities. Sadly, today, they continue to delay and deny services. But in many respects, now we face a second problem, and that is too little, too late. Too little services, too little action, too little information, too little commitment, and nothing being done to remedy the deprivations of services that thousands of children in Chicago experience because of Chicago's illegal budget cutting. Think about the statistics that you heard today. 75% of the staff responding to our survey said that a child, at least one that they knew, was not getting services 2.5 months into the school year because CPS had not filled critical staff positions. 75% said kids were not getting services because CPS had not filled critical positions. The State Board of Education recognized systemic violations throughout the CPS special education system in the computer design, staffing, budgeting, sharing of information, and the construction of their policies. To this day, there is no procedure for the Chicago Public Schools to provide compensatory education to the many children who lost services other than the remedies that existed before. CPS continues to deny that there was even a violation, and the State Board of Education has one staff person that they hired for the purpose of monitoring and enforcing the findings and remedy that the State Board adopted. Too little, too late. Governor Pritzker, we now say Governor Pritzker, we ask you to fix this problem. We ask you to hire more staff for the State Board of Education to make the monitoring and enforcement effort real. To have one person responsible for monitoring and enforcing the decree that was entered into by the State Board of Education is akin to saying that Norway will be responsible for policing Russia. It's simply not possible. Whatever the intentions are, unless there's adequate staff available to actually hold them accountable, it's not going to happen. And our experience day by day, week by week, is that CPS continues to delay and deny, it continues to do too little too late, and it continues to fail to provide meaningful collaboration with parents, teachers, the Chicago Teachers Union, and the advocacy group. We hope, Governor Pritzker, that you will change this situation immediately on taking office, both in insisting that there be adequate budgeting to provide the staff necessary, and in insisting that ISBE actually hold CPS responsible to the remedies that the state board itself adopted. Thank you. It may be that they're getting instruction, but the classroom is doubled up with another teachers, so whatever they're getting is not individualized to them, and it's really babysitting. It may be that they're being housed with an aide who's really there purely for supervision and not for assistance or instruction. So there are a number of different ways that kids are being adversely affected, but the result is that they're not getting both the amount of service they should get or the type and quality of service they should get.
In my instance from nursing services, my son has epilepsy and the school doesn't have a nurse on staff, has no one trained actually to notice what kind of seizures he has because he has 3 different ones. He was given diazepam, which is an emergency medication that has to be administered rectally, and they don't have an actual nurse on staff because they float them through, so they returned it back to me. Then we had this whole meeting, they took it back, and the district nurse said, yeah, we'll take it back, but we can't guarantee that there's gonna be someone there to administer because someone has to be certified. And I said, okay, well, on CPD's website, it says it takes at least 10 minutes for a first responder, and the closest firehouse to my school is 2.4 miles. So it's impossible for them to get there to administer a medication that has to be done in 5 minutes. It's not happening. So they're literally putting kids like my son and other kids like my son's lives at risk because there's no one there. And they're like, good luck, we'll just call 911. And that's not a resolution. Like, you're literally putting my child's life at risk. He has seizures every single day, and you're literally telling me, well, we'll hope for the best. That's not an answer. That's scary, actually. So that's my side of it.
And did any of you have conversations with the Pritzker himself beforehand? I know obviously there's a lot of surveys, a lot of organizations trying to speak with the gubernatorial candidates. Do you have any guarantees, insurances, or awareness of his stance on this particular issue?
No.
No.
Or have you shared the survey results or talked to CPS and state officials about them not doing, taking actions, personnel?
We have been having regular meetings, the core advocate representatives with the State Board of Education. We had a joint meeting last week with Chicago Public Schools and the State Board of Education. So we have been consistently and continually telling them of the violations and our concerns and their need to take action immediately. And we have not gotten the results that we think are appropriate for our children to get the services that they need.
What has the monitor actually been doing? Do you know what the monitor has been doing?
Well, we don't have a complete list, and in fairness, I assume that what we know is not the complete list.
Mm-hmm.
But the monitor has been working with CPS on training and participating in some of the training. The monitor has been reviewing policies with CPS and the State Board of Education Legal Office. The monitor has been working on policy changes, and we understand has been trying to figure out how they're going to prioritize the schools that they're going to look at. But we believe that there is no way that one person can visit the schools that need to be visited, can review all the policies, can supervise all the training, and really make sure that CPS is doing what it needs to be doing.
What does a good process for compensatory services look like in you all's eyes? What would that be? And how does that compare to whatever's happening now?
Well, right now, what they've said is that the IEP teams, which are the teams at the local school, composed of the same people who were responsible for denying the services to begin with, not because of their fault, but because that's what CPS told them to do, those same people are now going to be asked to make the decision. They're not being given training on how to make those decisions. They're not being given criteria for who qualifies or who doesn't. They're not being given a menu of options for what can be provided. This is a very complicated issue because many different groups of kids lost services. Some kids lost transportation, some kids lost summer school, some kids didn't get therapeutic day school or one-to-one aid. And what we've suggested is several things. We've suggested, number one, that there are some categories of service that we, the advocacy group and the state at CPS, could say, everyone who's in this group ought to at least get a certain amount of tutoring, or ought to at least get a certain amount of money in lieu of having been denied transportation. And we've also said that there are some categories where we need to bring in consultants, not the IEP teams, to look at what the child lost and to develop an appropriate remedy for that individual child. It's not really fair to the child to ask the IEP teams to do this, and it's not fair to the IEP teams to do it because it's outside of their expertise, and it puts them in a conflict of interest where they basically have to acknowledge that what was done for that child was incorrect, and then they have to come up with a solution. So we think that that has to be taken out of the hands of the IEP teams, or at a minimum, if the IEP teams are doing it, that they have to be trained and supervised in how it's done, not as part of the regular IEP process.
There's a lot of compelling findings in this report, but you said just 800 people responded. Are you concerned that the sample is too small, that this is not representative of what's going on everywhere?
Well, I think from our standpoint, 800 isn't a small number, it's a big number. So we have a different view of the size of the sample, but we're not, from our perspective, if we have 500 teachers saying that 80% of those teachers or 75% of those teachers are aware of kids not getting service, and that's the sample, whether or not that can be generalized or extrapolated to mean everybody, it's still large numbers. And so what we think is that that's representative. The other thing, as Natasha indicated, is that we're hearing this from teachers and parents, whether or not they took the survey, so we have lots of anecdotal reports that are consistent with it.
Can you put that 800 then into context?
Rather not. Or I think the context is that this is the tip of the iceberg.
Let me add one perspective, because this survey was distributed through the legal and parents advocacy and teachers network. So it's not unfair to say these respondents are the people who were interested in these issues. So even if the total number is 800, if we expand it to all parents and teachers of the district, maybe the number can be even much worse, because it will include the people like who are not interested or who are unaware of these issues.
I just want to also add, I am the co-chair of the Chicago Teachers Union Special Education Committee and also the Chicago Teachers Union Special Education Task Force. And I would like to just concur and agree with that this is most likely the tip of the iceberg. The fact of the matter that the majority of the teachers had not received training means that they are not aware of where the blatant violations of federal and state law actually occurred as of that, and they are not fully knowledgeable of where these implications take place. And so I believe that the end of year survey that will likely occur will also not only reiterate these facts, but also hopefully indicate some change.
One thing that we do know with respect to the training issue, CPS and ISBE themselves agree that the approximately 50% of the staff have not been trained. So that was consistent with our survey data, and they're telling us that as a system-wide issue.
What is the next step?
So we prepared the letter to Governor-elect Pritzker, and we explained these issues, and we offer the survey report as the indicator. And we'd like to have an opportunity to have a meeting with Governor-elect and his transition team to discuss the possible improvements we can make.
Other questions? One more thing as a next step will be that we intend to make sure that parents are informed about all of these things. We have been working on a variety of ways of communicating this information, in addition to the letter that the state is finally, months later, sending out. And we expect that many families will be seeking assistance on the needs of their individual child, whatever the state does.
Are there any more questions? Thank you, everyone, for coming.